This is the You Can Learn Chinese podcast. For everyone who's trying to learn Chinese or reaching for the next level, you came to the right place. I am your host, Jared Turner, and never trust atoms. They make up everything. My co-host is John Pasden, who's out this week, but he told me that 5 out of 4 people have problems with fractions and statistics. In this episode, we have a guest interview with Joseph Vincent. Let's get to it.
My name is Joseph Vincent. I am a Chinese and Spanish teacher at the Webb Schools in Claremont, California. I've been teaching here for 6 years. And before that, I lived in mainland China and Taiwan for about 5 years. And worked in experiential education, college study abroad before moving here to California to teach.
All right, Joseph, why did you start learning Chinese?
Why did I start learning Chinese? So when I was growing up, my cousins were living abroad in France. Their parents had jobs in Paris. And when I was in 6th grade, I went to visit them.
Oh, wow.
Because I grew up in rural Ohio. I didn't hear a lot of other languages growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went to France and I saw my cousins and I heard them speaking like perfect French, I got super jealous. I was like, wow, that just sounds so cool. Like, I don't know, it just sounded like a secret language to me.
And you, I guess, 6th grade, so you were probably, 11, 12 at this time?
Yeah, 11 or 12. So we went to Paris to visit them, and just hearing them speak French, I was like, I want to learn another language. And my uncle, who was living in France at the time, he was like, I've heard of these programs where you can be an exchange student. There's a lot of scholarships. Maybe that's something you could check out if you really want to learn another language. So, I had to wait a couple of years, but I did keep it in my mind. I was like, I want to do that because I was just really so impressed with my cousins.
Really?
So I applied to be an exchange student in high school through Rotary International. I don't know if you've heard of them.
My in-laws are Rotary members.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So I applied to be an exchange student. My neighbors at the time were Chinese. And they told, because I didn't know where I wanted to go. And they were like, well, if you go to Taiwan or China, we'll help you learn Chinese before you go.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, that sounds awesome. Helped me narrow down my options. And so I decided to go to Taiwan. And I ended up living there for a year of high school and learning Chinese.
Really? What year of high school was this?
It was my junior year.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
So for anyone not familiar with the U.S. educational system, well, that'd be 11th grade, right? And so I guess you were 16, 17 at the time?
I was 16, yeah. It was in 2007.
Wow.
That I went. So yeah, it was amazing. I went to a Taiwanese high school, a public school. I lived with a Taiwanese host family who, they spoke a little bit of English, but not much. So I was totally immersed and I learned pretty quickly.
I'm very curious to hear about this because I've talked to a lot of people, their stories, and, they're like, oh, they've studied Chinese for years and now they go to China the first time and, they're like, oh, this is crazy. I'm assuming you had very, very basic Chinese at the time, and now you're going to a Taiwanese public high school. I'm assuming it's all in Chinese. Was there any English? Tell me about this.
Yeah, it was all in Chinese. What was really nice was the teachers were super flexible with me because they knew that I didn't understand much. So most of my...
Much might be generous, right?
yeah, that's true. I understood pretty much nothing. So yeah, my schedule was basically a lot of PE, a lot of drawing classes. I went to a couple English classes and I would help out the teacher a little bit. But yeah, it was mostly PE and drawing.
I assume you learned how to play badminton very well.
Yeah. And I was pretty good at baseball. I got pretty good at sports, but those classes were really helpful to me because I got to just practice speaking a lot. So in my drawing classes, a lot of the time it was free time. So we would just sit there and kind of draw and we would chat. Those were my Chinese classes, really. They were drawing classes, but I just talked. And that's really where I learned how to speak Chinese.
Wow. Tell me a little bit more about this process and how long did it kind of take you before you felt like, hey, maybe I can start to understand a little bit what's going on? And yeah, maybe you could talk about this.
Yeah. I have a memory of my mom and my uncle visited me in Taiwan over Lunar New Year. which was in February. And I remember by then I was like translating for them. I could get around pretty well. So that would have been like 6 months in. But yeah, I guess my learning process was like, so Rotary also set us up with language classes.
Gotcha.
And then my host family was also very generous, like spending a lot of time with me practicing and helping me to understand things. My classmates were amazing. I mean,
Really?
just looking back, because I also had my homeroom class. And so when I wasn't in my drawing classes, I was with my homeroom class, and they helped me so much. Like if I was reading like a little children's book and I didn't understand a word, like they would always help me, and they really made me part of the class. It was really cool. So Taiwan is just such a friendly place. And so there were a lot of really kind people who came together to help me out.
I imagine also during this period, there were probably struggles, in trying to communicate what you need. And I mean, were there some times where you felt like maybe it was just overwhelming or maybe too much, or you thought about, I want to go home or anything like that?
There were definitely times that I wanted to go home. I would say the second half of the year, I loved it. The first couple of months were really hard. I had at the time, it was like, I forget even what it was, the blog. It was like Zanga or like Live Journal or something where I was blogging about my experience. And at a certain point, I was kind of complaining a lot because, I wasn't put into the art classes until a couple months in. Before that, I had a totally pretty much normal, like I just followed my class.
Yeah.
So it was like math, Chinese literature.
Oh, no.
Really tough stuff. And at my school, we went from, it was called Jingwen Gaozhong, Jingwen High School in Muzha, Taipei. And so I believe the schedule was something like I took my bus at like 6 or 7. We got there at 7:30 or 8. And then we stayed at the school until I think 8 or 9 at night.
Oh, wow.
So it was really long because after class, everybody stayed together for the bushiban, like the cram school.
Yeah.
The cram school was held at my school.
Oh, man.
So it was pretty brutal for me. Like I just waking up so early and then not understanding things. It was a tough situation. And that was the first year that my school had ever had like a non-Chinese speaking student before. So I just think that there was everybody came together in the end, and I'm incredibly grateful to all of my teachers who helped me. But at the beginning, it was, there was a steep learning curve for sure for everyone.
They were sort of trying to figure out, hey, how do we help you? How do we make this work, right?
Yeah. So
what got you through some of those really difficult times?
I would say Taiwan just has so much beauty. Like when I was stressed, I would go like for hikes in the mountains. I got really into hot springs when I was in Taiwan. So I would go like most weekends up to this neighborhood called Xinbeitou in Taipei. Yeah, it's one of my favorite places in the world. And then, I would say hiking, hot springs, just exploring Taiwan. That's kind of what got me through because it's an amazing place. I don't think it's on a lot of people's travel radar, or at least in my like friend circle. It's not on a lot of people's bucket list, but for me, it's just really gorgeous. I really enjoy it.
Were there any points where you felt like you had some breakthroughs? You told me that story about your parents came and visited and you were able to translate it for them and stuff. But do you remember any points where it's like, oh, wait, this is starting to click. Maybe I can do this.
This is a very random story, but I remember one of my classmates saying to me, 我没有. Like I asked her if she had something. I forget what, maybe it was like, do you have a computer or something? And then she said, 我没有, like my sister has it. And I actually understood that she was saying that her sister had it rather than 我没有. Like I don't have it.
Oh, I see. I mean, 没有. Oh.
Yeah, she just said 没, like instead of 没有. Yeah.
Okay, I see.
So that was a moment where I was like, oh, like for so long I didn't take tones seriously, or I didn't really care about them. And at that moment I realized, oh, wow, like if she had said this a different way, it would have meant something very different. And I was proud to have kind of understood that distinction.
Wow. Well, you got me there because it's 没有 or 没有, right?
Yeah, 我没有. Yeah. So I don't know, that is such a random memory, but it stuck with me of like the moment that I kind of realized the importance of tones. So I think for a long time I was like, oh, they're just being difficult. Like tones don't actually matter, but they do. They really do.
The difference between you don't have or your sister has.
Right. Yeah. So big difference.
That's really cool. So, I mean, after this study abroad, you came home after a year?
I came home after a year. Yeah, I was there from August until July. Went back for a year. I finished high school. And then I took a year off before college. I got accepted into college and then I took a gap year. On the year off, part of my time was I got hired to teach English at a summer camp in Taiwan.
Mm.
So that was really cool to go back.
Now, were you looking for an opportunity to go back or did it just find you? I mean, what happened here?
I was applying. When I went back to Ohio, I wanted to keep up with my Chinese. So I found a local university, Kent State. I'm from near Kent State in the Northeast Ohio. And there's like a big cohort of Taiwanese students there. And so my friend who was an exchange student who was now studying at Kent told me about her friend who was from Taiwan and how she had a lot of Taiwanese friends. So that kind of became like my friend group. I went up all the time and hung out with them and, kept practicing my Chinese and everything. And then they told me about this program called World Passport to teach English in Taiwan. So that was my second time going to Taiwan. And it was really fun to go back, like making a little money so that I could be a little more free and kind of, just enjoy traveling and not having to go to school every day.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty neat. But what was it then that kind of drew you back? I mean, obviously your path ultimately did take you back to China for a longer period of time. But at this stage, I mean, I know there might have been some people that went through, this exchange program and yeah, you learned some Chinese, but maybe that was enough, right? What brought you back and decided, hey, I want to go back and I want to do this?
I think it was the warmth of the people and also just like the beauty of the place, like I was saying earlier. So I grew up in Northeast Ohio. It's very flat.
I grew up in Illinois. I know what you mean.
Oh, yeah. So for me, I remember the first time that I went to Taroko Gorge, it's in eastern Taiwan, Tailuge. It's called in Chinese. Yeah, so it's this national park near the coast of eastern Taiwan. And it's just gorgeous. It's like these beautiful marble caves everywhere and this amazing gorge with this river running through it that's like blue water. And I had never seen anything like that before. And it just kind of blew my mind. And then my mind was already blown just by the scenery. And then all of a sudden I'm like, my friend takes me to we're on this hike and then we're hiking down into this river and there's this cave with hot spring water dripping down the mountain.
Wow.
And there's all these nuns from a Buddhist monastery sitting in this hot spring, hanging out and laughing. And to me, it just felt like another world that I had never imagined places like that really existed, outside of the movies. I think experiences like that, just being really having this sense of awe so many times, when I, everywhere that I traveled in Taiwan. And then, yeah, just the hospitality of the people. So much of this has to do with my background is I don't look like I'm from Taiwan. And so.
No, you don't.
Yeah. And so, people they want to show you their home. I think that there's this sense in Taiwan, not many people know about Taiwan. So we want to show them how proud we are of where we're from. I remember one time I was at a night market and I was just buying some stuff and this lady came up to me and she was like, hey, you seem like a nice person and you're good at Chinese. We're going on a trip this weekend to the mountains. Do you want to come? And her two kids were there.
Really?
And it was just so random. But then we ended up getting
Did you
dinner.
go?
I actually did.
Sweet.
Yeah. And
yes.
Yeah. So she was like, how about you teach my kids English for an hour and then we'll you can get to know them and then we'll go on this trip. And I just had, just so many experiences like that where people were so warm and so kind and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, it showed me just the goodness of people, when people are so open to strangers and being kind to them and sharing their values and their culture with them. It was really special.
Wow, that's really neat. That's a fun story as well. Yeah. Of course, she did want you to teach your kids English. That's pretty normal though, right?
Yeah. Well, I think, I don't, anyway, yeah, she was very sweet. Her family was very sweet.
That's a neat story. That's really neat. I'm also interested to know, what did your family think about this? Obviously, when you were in high school to do that study abroad, you needed your parents' support and everything to make that happen. But how do they feel about all of this?
Yeah, my parents were very supportive. I remember at first when my uncle, who was living in France, told me the possibility of studying abroad, I was really excited. And I told my parents and they were like, absolutely not. Like, there's no way that's happening. But then I waited like 2 or 3 more years and then I had never forgot. And I just kept every year. I was like, okay, only 2 more years, only 1 more year. Okay, I'm going to apply next year. And I finally did it. And when I did, I think that they were very supportive. It was interesting because at the time, one of my dad's friends kind of had a sit down with him and he was like, I can't believe you're letting your son do this. This seems so dangerous. Yeah, he was definitely like judging my parents for that choice.
Interesting.
Which I found, or I don't know. I'm just grateful that my parents were open because I grew up in a pretty more like rural/suburban area.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of people hadn't really like traveled a lot, so they didn't know about things like experiences like that. So I'm really grateful that my parents were just open and supportive, and I'm very grateful for that.
That's great. I find that oftentimes that perception still exists. I went on a trip this last year with a bunch of kids to China, and my boys were with me, and there were a lot of parents who were concerned. Is it safe? And I'm like, it's very safe.
Yeah.
You're probably going to be much safer than we would be if we're in the States, frankly.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, I remember, being in Taipei, like you could walk around at any time of night in almost any neighborhood and you feel pretty safe. I mean, I'm sure that there's like 1 or 2 exceptions, but generally it's
not
just
many.
Not many. I mean,
I tell you, I could have like, money falling out of my pocket, walking down the darkest alley, with dudes hanging around, and I'm fine.
Yeah, totally. So.
Well, what came next for you? Because it sounds like you made some sort of turn where it's kind of like, hey, Chinese is important to me. And I'm also curious to know how other languages fit into this, because I know you speak Spanish and you learn French as well. So it looks like there's something lingering there from your experience in going to France and visiting your cousins. So how did this all come together for you?
Yeah, so in middle school and high school, I took French. I took up to AP French in high school.
Oh.
Yeah, got a 5. My proudest accomplishment. No.
Congratulations. That's pretty serious. That's solid, though.
Yeah, I really enjoyed learning languages. I'll date myself here, but my first AIM, AOL Instant Messenger name was Linguistical Joe. Because I kind of identified as a language geek, even starting learning French in 8th grade. I got really into it.
Gotcha.
So
I'm guessing that's now your Discord and Reddit username. And we won't disclose that on the podcast, though. Keep going.
Yeah, I studied French through high school and then, went to Taiwan and learned Chinese. My junior year, I got accepted into college and I took a gap year. My goal for that year was I wanted to make it a year about languages. And so I did this program called WWOOF, WWOOF, Worldwide Organization of Organic Farming.
Oh, interesting. Tell me about this.
Yeah, I was in Quebec, Canada, because I didn't have a lot of money.
I noticed you said it the proper way, Quebec. This man speaks French.
Yeah, so I took a flight up to Montreal and then I took a bus to this little town called Sherbrooke. Anyway, I was working on this farm and it was outside of this town called Sherbrooke. WWOOF is a really cool organization. It's a way so basically you volunteer at a farm in exchange for lodging and food.
Huh.
So for an 18-year-old with no money, I had enough money to buy the plane ticket, but not much else.
Cheap labor program, but yeah.
Yeah, so...
But you got an experience out of this. What do you think you learned, or what was kind of that experience like for you?
Oh my gosh, I loved it. I've thought about doing it again in my old age, but now I think I might rather just pay for a room rather than work for it. I don't know. Maybe one day I'll go back, but I really enjoyed it. It was a really cool way to kind of get off the beaten path and not just do the touristy things in Quebec and be able to really, I worked on 3 different farms. I stayed with each family for 2-ish weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. So I spent 2 or so months and it was really cool. Yeah, I learned how to plant onions. I did a lot of weeding. I helped babysit the kids when the farmers were out working, the parents were out working. All of it was great because I specifically found farms where they said French only at the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
So that was really cool because after taking it in high school, I had never really had experience of using French. So it was great to just be immersed. And they said like, yeah, we don't do English here, so we're going to speak French. And so it was really good for language learning. And yeah, it's really cool.
Wow. Where did Spanish come into the mix?
So my first summer of my year off, I was in Quebec with the farming program. The second summer, I was in Taiwan teaching English. And then the time in between, I did a Spanish immersion program in Mexico.
Wow.
So I lived with a Mexican host family and I went to university classes to learn Spanish.
Wow.
So I think after learning Chinese, I kind of caught the language and the travel bug.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. So maybe at some points to almost like an unhealthy extent, but it's been a fun journey for sure.
I have one other question about your experience there on your study abroad when you were in high school in Taiwan. How did you learn characters through all of this? I mean, I can totally get, speaking. And I also know that they use the bopomofo and they have the juing, which is a little different than pinyin, right?
Yeah.
How did you approach characters and did you learn much during there? Maybe you could talk about that.
I was able to get to the point where I could read most of what I could say, I think, by the end of the year.
Wow.
This was 2007, and what was really popular at the time was the Dianzi, the electronic dictionaries. They had these little things where it was almost like a
Palm Pilot thing, right?
I was going to say Palm Pilot. Yeah,
Yep.
I couldn't think of the word. Like a Palm Pilot that's a dictionary.
For all you Gen Alpha, whoever, you don't know, those were like the predecessors to smartphones. It's kind of like a smartphone, but not. No phone in it.
So I bought one of those, that was a big deal for me because before that I just remember sitting in my high school library when I was trying to, my teachers would give me their old children's books that their kids read. Which actually, side note, I mean, children's books can be really hard to read because they have a lot of really random vocabulary that's not that helpful. But at the time, that's all I had to work with was these children's books that had, sometimes on the side, they would have the bapamofo, like the juin, the phonetic spelling that's used in Taiwan. So I would either if I had a book that had that was great because then I could look up the word in the dictionary, a paper dictionary, using the phonetic spelling. If they didn't have that, then I would go in and I would look at how many strokes each character had, and I would figure out what the word was. Or if I had somebody, the librarian was very good to me, and I felt bad because I think every 3 minutes I was going up and asking her a new word.
Just a shema.
I know, yeah, just all the time. But that saved me a ton of time because otherwise each word took me 3 minutes to read. To be able to find, if you didn't know a word, it took a long time. So it was definitely getting that electronic dictionary was a big deal. I remember, it was it's a big deal in my life.
So I'm guessing that was really something that really helped you get your characters down.
It did. So, but at that time, I feel like the only resources that I had to really read were children's books. That's what everybody told me to do. But then I found that those were actually quite hard. And then there was this thing in Taiwan called Apple Daily News, 苹果日报. It's a children's newspaper. And that was actually sometimes easier than the children's books because it's telling real life stories. So it just felt more words that were more important than children's books that are more fantastical. Yeah. Where there's a lot of vocab that's imagine. Yeah. So
interesting.
Anyway.
Well, why did you decide to get into teaching? And it sounds like I know you've did some other jobs and doing experiential, study abroad trips and things like that. What made that shift for you saying, hey, I want to teach this language?
So in undergrad, I went to college in Portland, Oregon at Reed College. And I was a Chinese literature major, which I decided my junior year. I actually didn't want to major in Chinese at first. I felt like I had kind of been there, done that, and I wanted to try something new. But then I ended up really loving the classes. And I really enjoyed learning about Chinese philosophy, Chinese literature. I remember my freshman year of college, I took a class where we read Zhuangzi, who's a philosopher that I still really love. And I go back to, his stuff. So that kind of started me out. That's kind of where I found out that, with Chinese, there's more than just language, there's also like this whole, like thousands of years of literature and thought and philosophy. So I got into that, and that's when I started pursuing Chinese in a more like academic way. I did my master's in Chinese literature in Taiwan.
Oh.
Right after college. So I moved to Taiwan after college and lived there for a couple years. I thought I was going to do a doctorate in Chinese, but then I started working and study abroad, and I realized just how much I liked working with high school students. I got a little tired of like being cooped up in a library, like reading old stuff, like Ming Dynasty and Qing Dynasty literature. And I wanted to like have more contact with the world, I would say.
Living people.
Yes, living, to put it briefly, living people, yeah. I started teaching when I was working in the study abroad company and took my first teaching job 6 years ago now. And I really enjoy it. I really enjoy, seeing my students learn Chinese and then be able to like use it in their daily life. Where I teach in California, there's a lot of students at my school speak Chinese at home, but they don't know how to read. So it's really cool for me to see them over the years like grow as readers and be able to read the words that they're able to say and that they've been able to say for a long time.
That makes sense. From your perspective, Joseph, you speak a number of languages and you're teaching Spanish and Chinese right now. Why do you think it's important for people to learn languages? Or is it important at all for people to learn languages?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important. Yeah, I mean, I hope it's important because
biased opinion, maybe. No, I'm just kidding.
I've spent so much of my life doing it. I have to believe it's important, or else what have I been doing? But I think for me, it's about connections and relationships. I think that there's something to be said for people who put in the time to learn a different way of like seeing the world and thinking about the world. To me, that's often what a language is. It's like a way of talking about the world. Like there's so many expressions in each language that kind of hold a worldview. And to me, when you learn them, you kind of gain an access a little bit to that way of seeing the world or thinking about the world. And I think that when people see that you've put in the time to learn about like a different way of thinking or seeing the world, they appreciate that. And it creates an opening for like building a relationship and getting to know someone.
Well, there are a lot of languages out there someone could choose to learn. Why do you think learning Chinese is important?
I think China is, kind of like I talked about earlier, Taiwan is a beautiful place. China is a beautiful place. For me, learning Chinese has taken me so many places. I just feel like there's so much diversity in the Chinese speaking world. Like I speak Chinese all the time where I live in LA. There's tons of Chinese speakers here. I've met a lot of friends like through speaking Chinese, like people that I wouldn't have really necessarily talked too much otherwise or gotten to know. We had that connection from speaking that same language. I had spent 5 years in Taiwan before I ever went to mainland China for the first time. And so my first time going to mainland China is when I realized like, oh, wow, Chinese is really cool because it can open up this whole almost continent of a country of things that you can see.
Yeah.
Just going, like into far Western China, like in Yunnan and Sichuan province, where it's just so different from what I knew in Taipei, but yet the same language can still be used to communicate. I think that was really cool to me. Just like the sheer vastness of like space, the places that you can go and use Chinese to get around.
Yeah, I'll even add to that. I find that anywhere you go, you're typically going to find, like Chinese restaurants run by Chinese people in almost every country.
It is true. Yeah. When I was living in Mexico, there was a Chinese restaurant near where I lived and I became really good friends with them. And really anywhere you go, I feel like you can use Chinese in a way that I don't think can be said about many other languages.
Yeah, I was in Mexico over this Christmas break and went to some boba tea shop, and lo and behold, run by Chinese. So,
I remember a couple of years ago, I was in Indonesia, which I guess is it's not that far from China, but just talking to people in Chinese there, it's also like a way to make friends and wherever you go, really, kind of like you said.
Yeah. Joseph, I want to tap into some of your experience and perspective as a teacher, as a learner. What are some less effective and more effective ways to learn Chinese or even a language in general?
I think a key that comes up for me over and over as a language teacher is you want to stick to the basics and you want to stick to the high frequency words before you move on to the really fancy grammar and the fancy words. So I feel like there's kind of like this gamification that can happen of language learning which is great. Like I love games, but like I have students where they're like, oh, I know this many words. That is great. But I think that high frequency words are like 20 times more important than any other. And just really being able to use those words confidently and understand like the basic structures before you're just like off memorizing really complex stuff. That's something that I see time and time again.
I usually define those as like knowledge versus proficiency.
Mm-hmm.
You know this characters or this many words. Okay, can you actually use them? Are you proficient in them, right? And that's usually often a little different.
Yeah, and using words in context. So, what is this word often used with? I think it's helpful to teach students like short phrases rather than just one-off vocabulary words. Because a lot of times you can't use the word in the same way that you would in English.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I would say that's my biggest thing is like, I don't want to say review the basics because to review means that you've already mastered it, but like really master the basics. Like in my Spanish class, we do this thing, I teach Spanish 1. We do the same exercises almost all year. And students, I think it is helpful to just keep practicing the basics because if you don't get it in, I would say hundreds of times, you're going to forget it.
Yeah.
And I think people underestimate how many times you have to repeat a word to be able to really know it.
Yeah.
And not forget it.
Some of the research I've seen is that, they say 10 to 20 times before a word is learned, quote unquote, learned, but that doesn't account for all the different, word pairs, contextual uses, and that can take hundreds and thousands, and not 100,000, but hundreds and then thousands, depending on the word and the situations, which sounds about right to me.
Yeah, even students who for instance, I guess I'll plug Mandarin Companion, but
hey,
the breakthrough readers, I have a lot of students who say, like, Mr. Vincent, I know every single word in this book, but I don't know what this sentence means. And to me, that's really kind of exciting because that means like you're almost there and like it's going to be so awesome like once it finally clicks.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've worked with readers, learners on that too. Like, I know this, but I don't know what it says. Well, just keep reading.
Yeah,
you keep going.
Like, it's so exciting.
It'll start clicking, I promise.
For sure, yeah. Like you've got the tough part down, learning the characters. Now just learn the nuances of how it's used in context.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
What are some more effective ways that you've seen people learn language? And maybe that's, can even border between stuff that might be happening in a classroom and maybe even things that students are doing on their own, barring full immersion in the language, because we know that can be pretty effective.
Yeah. I think reading things that you can read without having to decode. What I often did when I was learning Chinese was I would like sit down with like a newspaper or something, and I would try to decode every single word.
Oh, yeah.
And then like translate it. And I thought that was just going to do wonders for my Chinese. But I think that it's actually way more effective to just read things that are pleasurable, where you can understand the story. So again, back to Mandarin Companion, like if I have students who can read every character in the book, to me, that's great, because then they'll just keep solidifying their foundation and the structures will become more natural to them because they've seen it more times. So then they won't have to memorize a structure. It just comes in naturally.
I agree with that. I'm of course a little on the bias side towards reading, but reminds me of this quote from an educator from Oxford named Christine Natal. And she said, the best way to learn a language is to live among the speakers. The next best way is to read extensively in the language, which is, reading at a high level of comprehension.
That's great. Yeah. I've used italki a lot. I really enjoy italki. I think but I guess that's kind of part of the immersion thing.
Italki, for anyone who's not familiar, it's a great place to find a tutor or teachers, right?
Yeah, and I just use that to practice conversation. I found really great teachers on that.
That's great. I think at the end of the day, classes can be good. They can also not be as good, right?
Yeah.
But, typically, though, having some one-on-one instruction can be very effective, right?
Yeah. And I would say my last thing is like finding a podcast that, if you can find one that's like at your level, that you can just, where you can just listen to it for hours and just without it feeling like work, that's like the gold prize. If you can find that, which you have to have a certain level for that. But if you can find something at your level, that's a great way to really get a lot of input and improve quickly.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, Joseph, if you could go back and change anything or do anything differently in your Chinese learning journey, what would it be and why?
I don't know that there's much that I would do differently, but I do know that, if I were learning Chinese now rather than in 2007, it would definitely be a lot more efficient. Kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where, I would spend like 3 minutes or more like looking up one character. Just to think that now, I mean, you can just so quickly look things up on Pleco, or, you can just scan the word and it immediately comes up.
The optical reader. Yeah.
The optical reader. I mean, things like that are just so helpful. So I would just say learning Chinese now is easier than it's ever been. And that's like pretty exciting. Like you can learn so much faster than people have ever, which is really cool. I mean, and to think in 2007, it was like, at least I had my electronic dictionary. So that was still way easier than like, 100 years ago when there were just very limited resources. So I would say it's just getting easier and easier, and like jump in because you have a lot of support.
Well, Joseph, thanks so much for taking the time to, share your story, your perspective. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
You have been listening to the You Can Learn Chinese podcast. My name is Jared Turner, co-founder of the Mandarin Companion Graded Reader Series. My co-host is John Paston, co-founder of Mandarin Companion, founder of All Set Learning, the Chinese Grammar Wiki, and Sinosplice.com. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe. Take a moment to share it with a friend. It helps us to reach more people. You can leave us a review on iTunes or reach out to us at mandarincompanion.com or find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can find our Chinese Graded Reader Series on Amazon, iBooks, Google Play, or wherever you find your books. Apologies to John Cena. We just ran out of time. The You Can Learn Chinese podcast is produced by myself, Jared Turner, and our editor is Jasper Chua. A special thanks to our guest, Joseph Vincent, and of course, thanks to my co-host, the man, the myth, the legend, John Paston. See you next time.